Good morning, fifth graders. I hope we're all having a great day. I'm Miss McFarlane, and today we're going to be reading A Journey with Francisco Vasquez de Coronado by Stuart A. Callan. So, Introduction: The Search for Gold. In 1540, Spanish explorer Francisco Vasquez de Coronado was the governor of New Galicia, a province in northern Mexico. Coronado's friend Antonio de Mendoza ruled all of Mexico, then called New Spain. Mendoza and Coronado had heard rumors about the 7 cities of Cibola. The mythical cities of Cibola were said to be filled with silver, gold, and jewels, and they were supposed to be somewhere in New Spain. In 1540, Coronado put together an expedition to find the 7 cities of Cibola. But after months of travel, Coronado found only deserts and native villages. As Coronado stated in a letter to Mendoza, "As far as I can judge it, it does not appear to me that there is any hope of getting gold or silver. But I trust in God that if there is any, we shall get our share of it, and it shall not escape us through any lack of diligence in the search." Coronado's letter is a primary source. Primary sources are documents and objects that make up the raw materials of history. Other primary sources from Coronado's era include reports, drawings, weapons, trade goods, and clothing. The value of primary sources can be seen in the sentence from Coronado's letter. At the time, Coronado had been searching the sun-baked deserts for nearly 4 months. The letter shows that Coronado devoted all of his time to finding the cities of riches, but he admitted his efforts had failed. Coronado kept hope alive and promised Mendoza he would not abandon his mission. Although Coronado's letter is more than 475 years old, it opens a window to his journey. Taken with other primary sources of the era, the letter provides a snapshot of a distant time. Coronado was driven to find gold and determined not to give up. Chapter 1: Becoming a Governor. Francisco Vasquez de Coronado was born in Salamanca, Spain, around 1510. He was the second son of Isabel de Lujan. His other brother was named Gonzalo. His father, Juan Vasquez de Coronado, was an upper-class official. He worked for Íñigo López de Mendoza, the governor of Granada, Spain. Mendoza had a son named Antonio, who was friends with Francisco. Francisco was about 8 years old in 1519 when Spanish conquistadors invaded Mexico. Hernán Cortés came to Mexico with about 500 soldiers. He also recruited native peoples who were against the ruling of Aztecs. Their combined forces conquered the Aztec capital within 2 years. The Spaniards renamed the surrounding territory New Spain. In 1535, Antonio de Mendoza was made viceroy of New Spain. Mendoza asked Coronado to sail to New Spain with him and work as his assistant. Coronado had been in New Spain less than a year when he married Beatriz de Estrada. She came from a powerful family. The marriage made Coronado rich because of a system called encomienda. Under this system, Spanish rulers could not force native people to work for them. However, they could not legally buy and sell the native people as slaves. The minerals the native people mined and the foods they produced were taken by the Spanish. Spanish King Charles V gave the rights guaranteed by encomienda to Estrada's family. Coronado received half of the wealth through his marriage. Inspector Coronado. In 1537, labor troubles erupted in and around Mexico City. African slaves and native encomienda workers revolted at a mine. Mendoza appointed Coronado the official investigator and sent him to look into the situation. Coronado decided 4 African men were guilty of causing the uprising. The rebels were tortured and killed on Coronado's orders. Mendoza was so pleased that he praised Coronado's role in a letter to King Charles V. Mendoza soon gave Coronado another task. There were problems at a mine near the town of Sultepec, west of Mexico City. Owners of the mine were accused of abusing the native miners. The workers were forced to carry heavy loads without food or rest. The mine owners weren't supposed to abuse the workers, according to the rules the Spanish royalty had made about encomienda laborers. Spanish royalty had also ordered mine owners to teach the workers about Christianity. The mine owners hadn't been following through on that order either. Coronado looked into the situation. He decided the mine owners were at fault. The matter was turned over to the High Court in Mexico City. The mine owners had to pay a fine. Becoming governor. In 1538, Coronado was assigned another mission. Mendoza sent Coronado to the town of Compostela, present-day Sonora, Mexico. The city was the capital of New Galicia. The territory includes several modern-day states in Mexico, including Jalisco and Nayarit. Sorry, guys. Coronado's mission involved writing a progress report about the governor of New Galicia, Diego Perez de la Torre. But when Coronado arrived in Compostela, he found that Perez had died. Since the job was vacant, Coronado took over the governor's duties. In April 1539, Mendoza officially appointed Coronado the governor of New Galicia. After just 4 years in New Spain, Coronado had risen to a position of greater power. Chapter 2: Rumors of Riches. When Coronado traveled to Compostela and New Galicia in 1538, he traveled with Friar Marcos de Niza, a Franciscan monk. Friar Marcos went to New Galicia to look into a rumor. In 1536, some Spanish explorers and an African slave, who spoke some native languages and served as the men's guide, had arrived in Mexico City with an intriguing claim. The men were the sole survivors of an expedition that had started in Florida in 1527 and ended 9 years later in Mexico. They claimed they'd heard stories that the region they'd passed through was home to the 7 cities of Cibola. The cities were filled with treasures. Coronado asked Mexican native peoples about the cities. Several people told him about a rich land made up of many villages. Coronado wrote a letter telling Mendoza that the people of Cibola wore gold, emeralds, and other precious stones. Emeralds and jewels. In March 1539, Mendoza sent Friar Marcos to search for Cibola near the present-day border between the United States and Mexico. After 3 months, Friar Marcos returned to Compostela. He wrote a report saying he found cities of Cibola far to the north. It is unknown what Friar Marcos really saw. Historians think he may have seen the large settlements built by the Zuni people. The settlements were called pueblos and contained adobe homes. They were made from bricks coated with mud. Coronado was excited by Friar Marcos' report. He left with Friar Marcos for Mexico City to tell Mendoza about the riches of Cibola. Coronado and Mendoza put together an army to conquer Cibola. The men would need money to pay soldiers and buy food, weapons, and other supplies. Coronado funded part of the mission with the money he gained through his marriage. Mendoza also added money to the mission. They believed they would make large profits after they conquered Cibola and seized its treasures. In June 1539, Coronado wrote to Spain's King Charles V, asking for permission to travel the northern lands. A king's assistant named Francisco Garcia de Loisa wrote back to Coronado. The official instructed Coronado to spread Christianity. Through your excellent efforts, you will bring the natives of that province under our sway and will bring them into the knowledge of the Holy Catholic faith. The conquistador Bernal Diaz de Castillo later wrote a book about Spain's role in Mexico. He was more honest about Coronado and the other Spanish explorers. We came here to serve God and the king, and also to get rich. Gathering an army. Coronado gathered an expedition at Compostela on February 23, 1540. There were about 280 Spanish soldiers and several monks, including Friar Marcos. The crew also included about 1,300 native peoples and servants. The soldiers carried pole weapons called lances. They were armed with swords, crossbows, rifles, harquebuses, and much more. The sound of trumpets filled the air when Coronado took his place at the head of the army. He was confident he could conquer the native peoples and convert them to Christianity. Above all, Coronado was sure he would find Cibola and become the richest man in New Spain. Chapter 3: The Quest for Gold. In early March 1540, Coronado was eager to find Cibola, but the thousands of people and animals on the expedition were having a tough time. Trails were narrow. There were many rivers to cross. The servants were so loaded down with equipment that they lagged far behind the soldiers on horseback. The army could move only about 10 miles a day. On March 28th, the expedition arrived at the Spanish outpost of Culiacan. By then, Coronado realized his expedition was too large. There was not enough food and water on the route ahead to support all the soldiers and servants. Coronado decided to leave the weaker members of his crew behind. On April 22nd, Coronado left Culiacan with 75 horsemen, 25 foot soldiers, and a small group of servants. Friar Marcos and 3 other monks were also part of the group. For more than a month, the expedition pushed through northern Mexico and into eastern Arizona. The situation grew desperate as cold weather slowed the men in the White Mountains of Arizona. Coronado wrote that the hard trail troubled the soldiers and that several servants fell down and died. This was a huge loss to the expedition. Horses also struggled to survive. The soldiers had some corn to eat, but supplies ran very low. Some were so hungry they ate plants along the trail. The plants were poisonous, and several soldiers died. Coronado described conditions in a letter to Mendoza. I entered the borders of the wilderness and found a worse way through the mountains and more dangerous passages than we had experienced previously. The horses were so tired that they were not equal to it, so in this last desert, we lost more horses than before. Crumpled Village. By early July, the expedition was within 5 miles of several towns Friar Marcos had called Cibola. The soldiers set up camp, but local native peoples soon discovered them and tried to scare them away. The native peoples circled the camp, yelling through the night. The soldiers scrambled to defend themselves from a likely attack. Some were so scared that they put the saddles on their horses backward. On July 7th, Coronado rode near the first of the 7 cities of Cibola. It was a village the Sunni people called Hawiku. The village was a The village of about 500 people had adobe houses surrounded by high walls. Castañeda described Hawiku. It is a little unattractive village, looking as if it had been crumpled all up together. It is a village of about 200 warriors, is 3 and 4 stories high, with the houses small and having only a few rooms, and without a courtyard. When the soldiers saw that Hawiku had no treasures, they cursed and shouted at Friar Marcos. 7 little villages. While the village had no riches, the native peoples had supplies of corn and other foods. Driven by hunger, Coronado decided to attack Hawiku to get the food. But his soldiers were so weak they could barely stand. Many had trouble shooting their crossbows and muskets. Coronado led the charge, riding near the walls around the village. Native warriors fought back by pelting him with stones. As Coronado wrote in a letter to Mendoza, the warriors knocked me down to the ground twice, with countless great stones which they threw down from above, and if I had not been protected by the very good headpiece which I wore, I think that the outcome would have been bad for me. Coronado was shot through the foot with an arrow and was rescued. The soldiers fought on, and they were able to capture the village, but Coronado had to face reality. There was no treasure. Coronado explained the situation to Mendoza. Friar Marcos has not told the truth in a single thing that he said, but everything is the reverse of what he said, except the name of the city and the large stone houses. The 7 cities of Cibola are 7 little villages. You may be assured that if there had been all the riches and treasures of the world, I could not have done more to capture them. Friar Marcos was sent back to Mexico City in disgrace, but Coronado refused to leave. He decided to continue his search for treasures no matter how hard the task. Chapter 4: To Kansas and Back. Coronado found no riches in Cibola, but he remained there with his expedition. Coronado asked the Zuni where he might find cities filled with gold and jewels. The Zuni told him of a river where giants were said to live. Coronado sent a scouting party to the river on August 25th, 1540. The 25 soldiers were led by Garcia Lopez de Cardenas. The men walked for nearly 3 weeks before seeing a canyon with a river flowing through it below. The group spent 3 days looking for a trail down to the river, but they could not find one. Although Cardenas did not know it, his men were the first Europeans to see the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River. The Taegu War. In September, Coronado realized his soldiers would not have enough food to spend the winter in Cibola. He moved his crew to Taegu, where the weather was warmer and there was more food. Taegu was on the Rio Grande near modern Bernalillo. It was made up of about 20 pueblos. The people who lived there were of the Tiwa tribe. Coronado's men clashed with the Tiwa. Soldiers stole blankets and coats off the backs of native men. The Tiwa attacked the expedition's horses and mules, killing about 50 animals. This caused Coronado to declare war on the Tiwa. The Taegu War lasted from January to March of 1541. The Spaniards attacked a village called Arenal, and a battle followed. Coronado's men set Arenal on fire. They killed hundreds of native people as they tried to escape the flames. About 200 Tiwa were captured and burned at the stake. Hundreds of native people were killed and their villages were destroyed. Another rumor of gold. After the fighting ended, a native prisoner of the Spaniards called the Turk and told Coronado. A native prisoner of the Spaniards called the Turk told Coronado about a village called Quivira in modern-day Kansas. The place was ruled by a king who slept under a tree filled with golden ornaments. The people were so rich that even the servants ate from gold dishes. Coronado learned that Quivira was far to the northeast. Many of the Spanish soldiers thought the Turk was lying. They believed he was trying to lead them into the wilderness where they would get lost and die. But Coronado had failed to find gold and had spent all his money looking for Cibola. He was extremely eager to return home with gold. On April 23, 1541, the Coronado expedition left for Quivira. The Turk led the way. The crew traveled through eastern New Mexico and into northern Texas and the eastern Oklahoma panhandle. The grass there grew more than 6 feet high, and there were no trails to follow. The soldiers were frightened by the endless sea of grass, but they were amazed by the herds of buffaloes, animals they had never seen before. Coronado called the buffalo humped-back cows. Finding Quivira. In the middle of August, Coronado reached Quivira. Several hundred Wichita tribe members lived there in straw houses, and they hunted buffalo. Coronado was once again troubled by what he found. Quivira had no gold, silver, or jewels. Coronado gave orders to his men to kill the Turk for leading his expedition astray. Winter was coming, and Coronado decided to give up on his search for gold. On October 20th, 1541, Coronado wrote a report about his mission to the king, admitting he had failed. What I am sure of is that there is not any gold nor any metal in all that country, and the grand cities of which they had told me are nothing but little villages. Coronado returned to New Galicia in 1542. His money was gone. The viceroy of New Spain believed Coronado was a failure and eventually took away his title as governor of New Galicia. Coronado lived out the rest of his years of his life in Mexico City. On September 22nd, 1554, he died from an unnamed disease. He was about 44 years old. While Coronado never found cities of gold, he was the first European to explore the deserts and plains of what is now the United States of America. So, fifth graders, that's it about Francisco Vasquez de Coronado. Here's the timeline of his journey. I really hope you enjoyed listening to me read to you guys about Coronado. Now I want you guys to go back to my PowerPoint and complete the Flipgrid for me. Thank you.